guys, so today we got the eBay turbo here. We got my Miata here, so we about to put them together, mount them up, and get to boosting. So let's get at it. Okay, so I just got a checklist of everything I need to do for this car, just to kind of keep me going. So the first thing we have on there is we need to mount the oil return bung. So I want to do this first just because it's I feel like it's the biggest pain of all this is just getting the solid hole tapped in the oil pan. So I think that's going to be where we start. Okay guys, so what I have going on here is I am currently feeding about 10 psi to the breather hose, back feeding it into the engine, so that way I can drill my oil bung, the return line for the oil. So if we go underneath here, you can see where I kind of already started the hole. So the way I did it was I just measured 2 inches down from where the top of the oil pan is, and just started drilling. So the reason why we are giving it positive pressure, so that way just as much of the aluminum gets pushed out when we're drilling. We don't want any of that in the motor. We don't want to prevent as much as we can. So I'm just going to keep drilling. I'm using a step bit, so just keep drilling until we get to the right size. Okay, so as you can see, I was able to finish drilling it. The lip on this fits in there nicely. So next, I'm just going to clean this surface off. And then I'm gonna see if we can just JB weld this. This bung's not the one that you can tap in there, but I think if we JB weld, it'll be all right. Okay, so underneath the car again, I did finish drilling that hole, and then I was able to clean the surface and then put the oil return bung on there. It is currently wet. We gotta let it cure for like 6 hours before we can really mess with it. But I just want to get that done first, just because you know, it takes the longest. Okay, so next we're going to need to get rid of the air tube and the MAF, filter, everything. The EGR tube and the exhaust manifold. So that we can throw the new manifold on there with the turbo, kind of mock up all the oil lines, and then get to mocking up the downpipe as well. Okay, so you know, everything's out of the way. We're ready to start installing stuff. So I put the exhaust manifold on and the turbo on, and I don't know how well it's gonna make it out on camera, but you know, the turbo's hitting the body right here. So what I did was I just kind of put out with a marker, and I think I'm gonna just take an air hammer, like with a smoothing bit, and I'm just gonna flatten that out like a 1/4 inch. Try not to hurt it too much. I might just like repaint over it just because I don't want like rust issues. So yeah, there's that. And then the other issue I did run into was the elbow for this power steering. It normally sits like perfectly horizontal, and it would be hitting the turbo if it was there. So I want to keep the power steering. So I think, or what I ended up doing was I just taking the bolts out. I put this an extra, like, you know, like probably 15 degrees, and then I put a bolt with a washer in there. So it should hold fine. Okay, so I was able to kind of form it back a good amount. As you can see, you know, there is a good amount of clearance for the turbo to sit, you know, comfortably and not really hit anything. That's good for like when the motor's torquing and whatever. So all right, next let's I guess fitting up possibly some of the exhaust. Okay, so back to making the exhaust. What I did was I just got everything fully mocked up. I put the manifold on with the gasket, the turbo on, and then also the flange that I have for it. And then down there I bought a flange, just like a normal, the standard you know, 3-hole flange. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut a bunch of pie shapes, and just to get like the 90s, or you know, just get some good angles. And then I'm going to tag it up, try to tag it up as best I can. Then I'll pull all this back apart and weld it all up, and then put it back into place. Okay, so let's get these tacked up. Okay, so here's an update where everything's at. It was a huge pain, but I was able to just piece everything together. It's all sitting in there. Some of it's tacked, some of it's not. So I just used the 90-degree elbow that I made, and then I had a couple pieces that were already kind of pre-bent, and I just used them to, chopped them up and stuff and used them to kind of get where I was at. And then I was short a little bit, so I added in this one sleeve right here, so I just need to tack it. Alright, so I got a couple things going. So first, here is the downpipe out of the car. So it's I tacked it up a little bit more, and I'm ready to just kind of weld everything with it all at once. So I'll just put you guys on time lapse for that. But this is also important. This is off the EGR tube. What I did is I just cut this off the EGR tube, and because there's no spot for the EGR tube on the manifold, so we're gonna have to block off the area on the back of the intake where the EGR would go in. So I just cut this off. I'm just gonna weld it, just fill that gap, and then I'll just put it back on there, so that way we don't have to worry about anything with that. Okay, so here's the finished product of the welded up downpipe. So I test fit it fit fine. The only thing I did have to do was I heated this area up and just bashed it in with a punch, the hammer, just so that way like the bolt, because the bolt wasn't wanting to go in. So now we can get in there, we can get to it. We should be able to get to it not terribly. It won't be too terrible. Should be good to go. I did, yeah, test fit it. It was fitting fine. So next we're gonna work on putting in that piece for the EGR. Okay, so right now we're on the passenger side, so you can see that's where the EGR port, EGR tube would go. So we have our block off plate and our gasket, so we'll just put that on. Okay, so I was able to fit up the exhaust, the downpipe from the turbo to the rest of the exhaust, and everything fit fine. It bolted up fine. So next what we need to do is we actually need to make the downpipe for the dump tube for the wastegate. I didn't really have any exhaust tubing this small. Where I went didn't really have anything. It was like 1.25 inch, so I just had this pipe laying around. It's the same thickness as normal exhaust tubing, so I think it should be fine. I mean, whatever. So what I did was I fit it up, and I just put some lines on there of with the right angle I want. It's kind of a tight area, but it should be good. So right now I'm just going to tack it and weld it up, and then I'm going to fit into place and kind of see what type of bends. I'll just heat this up and bend it to however I want it. Okay guys, so I was able to finish making that dump tube. It didn't really film it because it was a lot of trial and error, and it's not the best, but it should work for what I need it to do. So I really just heated that thing up and bent it to however I need it. Cut, welded it, whatever. It dumps underneath the car, so it should be alright. So I'm just going to bolt that up, and we should be good to go. Okay, an update for you guys. So I got everything back apart, like I said, downpipe and everything fit with the turbo. So now what we need to do, we just need to prep the surfaces for putting the gaskets and it finally going back together. And then we also had to put the fittings and the lines on to the turbo. So to start with that, we got to put on the return. I'm going to start with that. Good lesson on how to do these. You always want to cut them with tape to the right length. Then next, you just want to peel back a little bit of it, like 1.5 inches or so, and then you just want to fit on our line, one, and then just feed it through and then just keep working it in. Make sure that it doesn't really, you don't want the fitting that's on the line to move. You want the only one that moves to be this one going further in, really, as best you can. So my inches are only with 26 millimeters, as big as I had, so I had to move over the vise. I got one adjustable and then the vise holding it in. But yeah, we just want to tighten them down. Alright, it should be good. So I'm just going to trim this back and then just probably tape it up. Okay, so next we want to put our turbo, you know, the feed and drain on there. So we're going to remove these and then just, I'm going to RTV them. Use the gaskets provided and the nuts and just let them set for a little bit before we actually put some oil going through it. Another thing you do want to do is you do want to clock your turbo so that way these the oil feed is on the top, oil turns on the bottom. You want it as vertical as you can. In the car, I just kind of put it in place and had these bolts, all the ones on here and here, just finger tight, and then I was able to just clock the compressor and the exhaust how I wanted it, and then also the center, so that way, like I said, it was as straight as up as down as I can get it. Okay, so we got all the surfaces prepped. We got some RTV, ready to throw the exhaust manifold on. And then right after that, we're going to throw the wastegate with the dump tube on there. So I'll just show you guys in time lapse. Okay, so wastegate's on there, looking good, fitting up nice. Now next we're gonna throw the turbo on there, just make sure it's nothing really interfering. Then we'll throw the oil line on there and route that, make sure that the oil return is fine. And then we can put our downpipe on there, bolt everything down for good, and then we'll start worrying about running our high pressure oil line. There is the oil pressure sensor. Right now we're underneath the vehicle on the passenger side of the car, so there's the oil pressure sensor. We're going to be removing that, and then we're going to be adding in a T to add the oil feed line. So in order to get that, I think we might be coming over here to more of the front, and then we're going to be moving this bracket. So there's one bolt down here, two up top holding the intake down. I think so it would just be a total of 3 14mm bolts. Just going to get that out of the way, and then we should be able to get to that oil pressure sensor fairly easily. Okay, so that bracket and then the oil filter are out of the way. So you can see, here's the oil pressure sensor. This is what I'll be removing. But here's the idea behind it. Here's your oil feed. This end will be going to the turbo. This is going to be coming from the union, right, this T. So we're going to thread this part into the block. We're going to have an extra cap port that's going to be for, like, if you want like a oil pressure gauge, which I probably will add later, and then obviously to the T to the turbo, and then the original factory oil pressure gauge for the dash. So I think I'm just gonna probably start by threading in just the T without the oil pressure sensor or the oil feed, and then I'll add in the oil feed and the pressure sensor once it's already tied into the block. Okay, so I finished putting the oil lines together. As you can see, it's a little bit different than what we originally talked about. So the oil feed's coming straight out, and then the oil pressure sensors on the side, same with the plug. So I changed my mind and ended up doing it this way just because the oil feed wouldn't reach if it was coming out the side, and it just made a little more sense. So this is the final decision. Just gotta get that oil filter back on, the aluminum bracket, and we're good down here. Okay, we got the oil line ran across. It's not connected to the turbo yet, so what I'm gonna do is I have the fuse for the fuel injectors unplugged. So we're just gonna crank over the engine, kind of build some pressure up, oil pressure up, just make sure you get some good volume. Come feeding the turbo. So I just got the line going into a Coke bottle. So it looks like we got some oil coming out, so that's good. So everything's prepped through. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hook the line back up. Okay, so next I was able to mount or get the oil return line run. So I think the big thing about this is you just don't want any dips. You kind of want it to be just a consistent slope down into the oil pan, so that way there's no oil pooling anywhere. So it's just kind of going straight down from the turbo. Routed it wherever you can kind of just feed it through and then into the oil pan. So this is pretty solid setup. All right, everything's hooked up, so I think we should be able to start it up. All right, so you can see it was the turbine was working, so it was. I just kind of was hesitating to rev it up and stuff just because you know, not everything's hooked up. Like I only really have a couple bolts and everything, so it's leaking exhaust really bad. There's also smoking, but I kind of forgot that would just be all the oil burning off the turbine, like the blades and everything inside the turbo and like the manifold. There's a bunch of oil, so. But I think what I'm just gonna do real quick is I'm just gonna hurry up and button the exhaust all up, get the turbo fully mounted, because we know you know that everything should be good. You know, I did check for leaks. I didn't see any leaks anywhere, the oil return or the oil feed anywhere. So I think we're kind of good on this. So we're just buttoning it up, and then I think I'll let it run for a little bit more than what I did. To officially start it up, I got the downpipe on, sealed up, turbo's on, all the lines, the oil lines, downpipe's connected to the rest of the exhaust, so everything should be sealed up nice and good. So I think we can start it up. You can really feel pumping out some air when you rev it, you know, like the volume of air. I'm gonna try to give you guys something. Alright, so not the best decision, but I think I'm just gonna run it. I just threw just an elbow on there, no intercooler. I mean, it's like 30 degrees out, so I feel like it's not gonna be the end of the world. And I'm not really gonna feel any boost just because like this intercooler or this, you know, this intercooler piping isn't like really on there. It's just gonna kind of just guide the airflow in there, so it's not gonna really make any boost. But I feel like might gain some performance. So I just want to drive it. Super excited. I mean, to finally get this thing running. So I think we're just gonna go. I'm gonna go drive it and see what happens. All right, guys. So it's getting kind of late, so I think I'm gonna cut it off here. Hopefully this video helped. Definitely subscribe for part 2 of this. Pay attention. Watch out for that. I'll try to get it out soon. But I mean, I'm excited. It's spooling. So sweet. All right, we're in second gear. I'm just gonna try to just ease into it. Oh my god! Oh, you can literally hear the turbo. It was like a turbo flutter or something. There's no blow off valve. Oh no way! This is sick. It's too dark. It might be dark for you guys to see, but damn, you can actually feel that.